Hello, everyone. This is David Wiseman from BlackBerry. I want to thank you for joining us on the webinar today. We have a special guest speaker from IDC, Alison Brooks. I want to introduce Alison, and we're going to talk about a lot of very exciting topics, and we'll have time at the end for Q&A. Alison?
Thanks, David. Thank you very much. My portion of today's webinar is going to center on the future enterprise, resiliency, digital transformation, and then some of our future of practices, including the future of trust and intelligence. I think you'll see that combined, all of these elements need to be in place to deliver on a seamless, omnichannel, agile, trusted communications during event management. So let's start with the future of enterprise. And let me just take my video off so I can move the screen around one sec. And we're going to go live here to the live view. There we go. Okay. Let me just, 1 second. I'm struggling with the one live view button, but it's going to come up in a second. Here we are. Okay, so let's start with this future of enterprise. The future enterprise is IDC's vision for how firms have to organize and invest to participate in increasingly digitally centric markets that are focused on resilience. And we guide organizations to focus on these 5 key end states within transformation. They include culture, customers, intelligence, operations, and work. And I'm not going to go through each of them in detail. You can see how they're all structured, but this is really what we're encouraging our clients to think about as they move to this future enterprise, one which is digitally transformed and one which is resilient. So IDC developed its digital transformation maturity model to help its clients make the journey to the future enterprise. And on the left, on the side there, are companies who have not really done much in the area of digital transformation. On the far right are companies who are transformed and totally into digital companies. And according to IDC's global COVID-19 survey, only 35% of organizations reported that they were digitally transformed before the pandemic. And the other 65 are really just kind of still working on it. So for some organizations, DX is really and DX is digital transformation, you'll, I think, know that now, but just to clarify, it was a long journey lasting for more than 5 years, plus oftentimes with several kind of fits and starts. So despite the slow progress that we were seeing around digital transformation prior to the pandemic, progress really was happening. So in the late 2019 era, we predicted that 52% of global GDP would come from enterprises that were digitally transformed by 2023. And this is going to represent a significant tipping point in the economy, allowing us to safely declare that the digital economy has really arrived. So for those CEOs who are really running organizations that were increasingly becoming more digital than physical, a new agenda has really started to develop. In the late 2019 again, we outlined the new CEO's agenda for running the future enterprise in a digital economy, and it's centered around those following areas that you see on the screen there. So new customer requirements, new capabilities, new critical infrastructure, and really new ecosystems. And all of this, right when this was all set in motion, COVID came swinging in and completely flipped our understanding of the immediacy of digital transformation and by extension, digital and enterprise resilience. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, remote work, online presences, and digital services became necessary for most organizations to continue operations. And for those organizations slow to digitally transform, maintaining operations was really painful, and the benefits of digital transformation became acutely obvious. Now, a lot of people at this time, commented that we'd been through major crises like this before in recent memory, and they pointed to the financial crash of 2008 and 2009. But this time, it's really different. Whereas in 2008, we saw IT spending drop 4% more than global GDP, this time, with the pandemic, the technology is really being used to buffer the impacts of instability and volatility. And enterprises are really looking to use critical event management solutions as a means of quelling and softening the impact of this volatility. And as you can see reflected in some spending data from 2020, where 45% of survey respondents from our worldwide COVID impact survey said that their IT spending for 2021 would be higher than they expected in 2020. And if we look a little closer at some of the spending data across North America, Asia-Pac, and EMEA, you can see the same trends. Enterprises are really investing in technology to connect organizations and individuals, irrespective of location, situation, or context. They're focused on trust, agility, ecosystem innovation, and resiliency. But the unfortunate truth is that organizations are going to have to continue with this notion of continuous volatility. This is what we're saying is the next normal. And there's a number of megatrends and metatrends that we're seeing that are fueling this. So there's structural changes to specific industries, and there's a trend towards nationalism. The climate change challenge is another, and worsening deflationary cycle made worse by current monetary policies, and even the likelihood of another global pandemic. So what other types of critical events are contributing to this continuous volatility? I think we're realizing that the types and volume of events that can impact business continuity are really rising. So this includes compound environmental crises, denial of service attacks, network control issues, infectious disease spreads, as we've just been talking about, and other broad systemic issues. And just to give you some metrics on contributing factors, so you can see that network outages have increased 63%. Ransomware attacks have affected 30 of the largest U.S.-based organizations, enterprises. And the number of recorded natural disasters has risen from an average of 80 a year to 400 a year. So huge escalation in the types and magnitude of critical events that are occurring in the enterprise space. And this is growing both in terms of volume and type. And this is what we mean by having to adapt to an environment of continuous volatility. It impacts downtime. So we're seeing enterprises suffer from downtime in a number of key areas. There's a financial impact, there's a employee satisfaction impact, there's lost productivity, and social reputational impact. So these are all really quite serious at the enterprise level. So if we understand that organizations are really now on an accelerated journey to the future enterprise, which is the state required to effectively participate in the digital economy, we believe that many organizations will accelerate their digital transformation as they now have clarity about its criticality. But before they can get to the future enterprise, they have to be taking a slight detour as a result of the economic recession. And at IDC, we also created the 5 stages of enterprise recovery, a framework to help our clients plan beyond the immediate COVID crisis that they're facing. And the framework really maps out, what the various stages of economic recession and recovery look like. And we've been running this survey every 2 weeks for about the past year and a half, and we ask organizations around the world where they are in this framework. So currently, from the December data that I had at my hands, at a worldwide level, 13.7% of organizations are reporting that they're in the COVID crisis still, which means that, we're still responding to the crisis and focused on business continuity. And then 24% of organizations say they're in economic slowdown, meaning that as our revenue slows down, we're in cost optimization mode. 15.6% of organizations report they're in recession, which means that their revenue is expected to be in a prolonged decline and that they're focusing on, building business resiliency. 22% of those organizations are reporting that they're in a return to growth, meaning that, as their revenue is returning, they're looking for more aggressive investments. And then 24.3% of organizations are reporting that they're in the next normal, which means as our business stabilizes into what is now the new normal, they're working to operate more as a digital enterprise, and they see it as, vital to the success of their business. So the COVID-19 pandemic has really brought upon a global recession. Organizations are currently focused on cutting costs and figuring out how to be resilient in an uncertain future. And it's IDC's expectation that organizations will need to spend time in the business resiliency phase as we operate in that recession for an unknown period of time. So it's important for technology suppliers to understand the resiliency of their clients. And maybe, business resiliency might feel like an inconvenience on the side journey. to future enterprise, but it's really a necessary stop. And this is how we define business resiliency: the ability for an organization to rapidly adapt and respond to business disruptions while maintaining continuous business operations and its core sense of purpose. So it isn't just, the CIOs out there that are pivoting. It's really the entire C-suite, which is changing their business priorities and initiatives as well. The 9 initiatives associated with the CEO's new agenda for running the future enterprise have quickly become reprioritized. And in our most recent global COVID survey, we see that business operations resiliency, customer experience programs, and connectivity have moved from close to the bottom of the list to the top. And we've really seen business resiliency evolve in the past 2 years, basically from a pre-crisis where organizations were just investing in an ad hoc basis to address financial plans, and that they were kind of limited in orientation. And this changed early in the crisis in the 2.0 phase, in response to COVID, where organizations were expanding business resiliency plans to support those unique digital requirements of the pandemic, so that remote workforces, some digital commerce and automation could come into play. And now looking forward into digital resiliency 3.0 post-crisis, what we're seeing is that organizations are really preparing for novel business disruptions and are implementing plans that allow them to rapidly adapt as opposed to respond. And this is what we mean by business resiliency. So the investment in digital capabilities not only enables an organization to adapt, but also to capitalize on the changed conditions in certain cases. So I just want to talk about 2 facets to resiliency that we should probably flesh out. The first is business resiliency, which we're kind of talking about just in the last slide. We define it on the bottom there as the ability for an organization to rapidly respond to the business disruptions and restore business operations in a timely fashion. And then we have digital resiliency, which is the ability to rapidly adapt business disruptions by leveraging digital capabilities that not only restore business capability operations, but also capitalize on the changed conditions that we were just talking about. So to that end, from a digital resiliency perspective, there's really sort of 3 phases of response. The first is responding and restoring capabilities and emphasizing the safety and security of the workforce systems. The second is expanding and optimizing capabilities. And here we're talking about productivity and faster decision-making, customer outreach, stabilizing supply chains, and cost reduction. And then last, we're talking about incorporating digital resilience as a core tenet of the future enterprise to survive and thrive. And this is the kind of change we're seeing in the marketplace in terms of what people are interested in implementing to achieve their resiliency goals. So just how resilient do organizations think they were during the COVID-19 pandemic? In our global COVID-19 tech spending survey, we asked tech leaders, how resilient do you think you were on each of these dimensions? So leadership resiliency, brand resiliency, operational, workforce resiliency, technology, and financial resiliency. And as you can see, I should just clarify, this slide is really showing the percent of organizations who responded very or extremely resilient. And as you can see, that on the weaker end of the scale is technology resilience. So to better understand a little bit of which technology suites customers will value in supporting their business resiliency goals, we asked about 9 tech categories. And as you can see, the top 3, work transformation, digital infrastructure, and enterprise intelligence. And we're going to go into that a little bit more down the road, a couple more slides. But as you can see, organizations succeeding in the digital economy need to become good at pivoting rapidly as disruption comes to their organization. So one of the folks that we were talking to said the single most important issue we have going forward, we have to capture new ways of getting things done more quickly and make it part of our DNA. So what other organizational qualities need to be part of the DNA of business organization? Well, according to the surveys, again, the top qualities include becoming a learning organization, an intelligent organization, an innovative organization, and a trustworthy organization. And we're going to get into that a little more as well. So resilience is critical to digital transformation. And this has everything to do with the same types of capabilities that are in the critical event management capability space of the enterprise world. Also critical to recovery and resilience is trust. And in this environment, the big question for enterprises and their customers, partners, and regulators becomes not necessarily what is true, meaning demonstrably factual, but what's trustworthy. In other words, what information exists that is trusted enough to support taking action. And as you can see, here's our definition of trust: the condition that enables decisions to be made between two parties or entities that reflect the level of confidence, sort of measuring and weighing risk and reputation between parties. So in this era of multiple interpretations of truth, the big question for enterprises and their customers, partners, and regulators becomes not what's necessarily a consensus interpretation of the truth, which may not be attainable, but what's trustworthy. And with a focus on trustworthiness, what information can be used to support mutually beneficial exchanges between two or more entities, that condition of trust. And since the future of trust, this environment involves new elements that go far beyond the traditional ideas of security and risk and compliance, we're proposing 3 new outcomes, as you can see there in the green: trust-enabled commerce, trusted ecosystems, and trusted governance. And really, trust is all about maximizing return and creating a differentiated impact on revenue, expenses, and shareholder value. The last piece that I want to talk about, because it pertains to that organizational competence of intelligence, is this whole notion of the future intelligence and the role that real-time data plays within that. We at IDC, we define the future of intelligence as an organization's capacity to learn, combined with its ability to synthesize the information it needs in order to learn and apply the resulting insights at scale to gain a sustainable competitive advantage or an ability to fulfill the organizational mission. So it's this third piece that I want to talk about for a moment, because it's really realizing insights at scale that catalyzes the critical event management platform space. And the event management platform delivers real-time aggregated insights to stakeholders in a trusted manner. And I think that's the critical takeaway from all of this together. As depicted on this slide, enterprises that ensure delivery of insights at scale by surfacing actionable information to all users, whether that's humans or machines increasingly, in the flow and work, that's what makes them successful. And to enable scale, they're going to need to take advantage of the technical innovations like persistent memory or 5G, blockchain, and eventually even, far-fetched kind of concepts and technologies like quantum computing. So those are the types of things that are going to ensure scalability through cloud-native architectures to process not only large volumes of data, but also to support requirements of a large number of concurrent users. And the key for organization is to be able to learn, adapt, explain, and monitor, and then repeat. So now let's change the lens a little bit and look at a tangible example of how one organization, Eastman Chemical, was able to leverage the confluence of technology, resilience, trust, and real-time data management to address a critical event. So Eastman Chemical is a global specialty minerals manufacturer headquartered in Kingsport, Tennessee. It was founded in 1920 to manufacture the Eastman Kodak photographic chemicals. It's now a global corporation producing a wide range of advanced materials, chemicals, and fibers. And just to give you the sense of the kind of dangerous materials it's dealing with all the time, it employs its own on-site firefighters, EMTs, and fire maintenance systems. So despite all of its kind of preparedness, still in 2017, an explosion occurred at the Eastman Kingsport facilities coal gasification plant, one of its largest process safety events in 50 years. And it was really significant test of a new system that they had actually procured, Eastman Alert. So during the facility's coal gasification explosion, event managers, because of Eastman Alert, were able to immediately send a Class D, which is the highest level alert, to all personnel, outlining the event and helping share all of the emergency event information. This really did help all personnel immediately move out of harm's way. And the solution, as you probably guessed, was provided by BlackBerry. It was able to fully customize the solution to meet Eastman's unique needs, and it has now deployed its alerting system to 5 other sites. And it allows it to convey everything from weather issues to medical events via the alert solution. They had a different solution prior, and it just actually was lacking in standardization. It couldn't actually extend to multiple devices. It was just challenging it across the board. And so this really was a huge success story. And part of the success of this is that there are a couple of key solution features for, that were in play here. So the first was this notion of the omni-channel cross-platform distribution of messaging and warnings. That's critical. So is the reliable data gathering at the edge. A second feature that we like to highlight in terms of making these implementations successful is cloud. The cloud-based critical event management systems can be leveraged to promote resilience, sustainability, scalability, and business continuity across industries. The third piece is security. Security has to be embedded throughout, from the core to the tactical edge and out to the mobile device in the network. And fourth, I think it's really important to understand that when you're implementing these technologies, you really want to be working with a vendor who offers you a friction-free environment in terms of understanding your enterprise business and exactly what's critically important to you. And lastly, these notifications, it bears, making note of, we need to be delivering them in our mixed office environments, both inside the office, outside of office, increasingly irrespective of place or time. Okay, so to sum up my piece here, above all else, 2021 is about digital transformation and the acceleration of digital transformation via resiliency. And as we discussed, this is founded on trust, where security has to be a design point, threaded and embedded throughout the solution architectures. And it has to be predicated, to my mind, on cloud technologies and solutions, as these enable scalability and real-time data exchange in the platform, which is critical when you're dealing with these mass data-driven events. And lastly, again, work will continue to be different, and we need the resilient solutions that actually allow us to provide critical event management to people wherever they are, regardless of their space, location, or context. So thanks for your time today. I'm going to pop back on for the Q&A period at the end. I'd like to hand it over to David Wiseman now from BlackBerry to expand on how alerts the solution aligns with and caters to many of these trends and features.
Thanks, Alison. I wanted to talk to you a bit today about BlackBerry's capabilities, how we help our customers in this area, particularly the aspects of, as you're having a resilient organization, as you have the business continuity programs in place, that you actually have an underlying set of business processes and communications infrastructure in place that you can have a consistent way of, as an organization, responding to managing and recovering from negative events that affect your organization. Yes, so we talked earlier, Alison talked about a number of events that, come into play. Examples, cyber attacks, the number of those are growing dramatically. IT outages, particularly with the large number of people that are working in distributed locations now, over the past year, this has been a very, kind of key challenge for an organization, and how do they, manage the communications around these IT issues. And then things such as we talked about with Eastman Chemical, you have industrial accidents, site closures, logistics challenges, and then, of course, over the past year, everything around pandemic. So, there's a lot of types of critical events. Traditionally, they've been managed with stovepipe approaches. Hey, for an IT event, here's how we respond to it and communicate. For a safety event, for a logistics and operations event. So, our position is that you actually want to have a consistent methodology and a consistent platform for responding to those. And the reason is any of these events, they have real consequences. A recent survey, close to 70% of organizations feel, loss of productivity is a big impact, on the organization, but also affects employee morale, a reputation of the organization. So these are all very measurable and monitorable things, and you want to look at it from a consistent perspective. So as an organization, you can learn and improve, and you can build the trustworthiness with your customers, with your business partners, with your employees. And not only that are they important to the business, they can also be quantified in terms of dollars. So, data breaches are approaching $4 million per incident. Extreme weather events, on average, it costs an organization over $1 million. IT downtime, thousands of dollars a minute that it's down. So it's something that affects the organization as a whole and how they're perceived and how they operate, but it also affects it at the bottom line financially. So the more effective you can be at putting a system in place for managing your response to these events, that system is not going to stop the critical event, but it's going to help you respond more effectively, shorten the window, and hopefully minimize the negative impacts of those. So at BlackBerry, our approach to that is a process we've really refined over the past 20 years, primarily working with government agencies, large organizations like Eastman Chemical, with our BlackBerry ad hoc system. But what we've learned over the past year is all organizations are realizing they need to do a better job of responding and managing and communicating through a critical event. But they might not have all of the expertise and the dedicated staffs in place that the very complex organizations do. And so we've introduced our BlackBerry Alert system. Now, BlackBerry Alert is a platform that's going to allow them to manage any type of critical event. Whether that's supply chain, cyber attacks, natural disasters, IT outages. Obviously for any of those events, the initial detection and the immediate, we'll call it machine time response, varies. But once you move it to the human speed response, you can have a common process. And the key to that is preparation. So do you have the ability to define plans ahead of time, to run exercises against those plans? And then the actual response. Do you have a set of automated business flows? Have you set up, who needs to be notified in what conditions, and a way for them to securely collaborate, kind of manage that response effectively, and then gather the data that's needed from different affected parties or endpoints, pull that together and drive an effective recovery. And at the same time, be collecting the data and understanding the decisions that were made, so after action, you can come back, see, hey, how can we learn? How can we optimize? How can we do better? And that's really, that closing of the cycle and doing that over several, extended period of time. That's really what really helps to elevate, the trustworthiness of the organization. People are confident, next time, they'll do better because they'll learn. The organization will have learned. So if we think about an organization that doesn't have this type of system in place, and let's say they have a system outage, they have a data breach, what we typically find out is that on the fly they're trying to figure it out. Well, who do we need to involve in this? What information do we need to share? How do we evaluate how bad the situation is? We can't reach people. Their phone's not working, so it kind of becomes a bit chaotic. And then the people that you're trying to communicate with and give information to, that the trustworthiness of that information ends up lacking for them, because they might hear at different times, different people, different messages, and there's just kind of a lack of confidence. And that not only impacts the response to the immediate event, but it also impacts the overall confidence and trust that people have in the organization as a whole. So, our approach with BlackBerry Alert is to give a standardized platform that's going to allow you to have defined response programs, to run drills against those. You've decided ahead of time who you need to notify, how are the different ways you're going to notify those people, and you're going to have put the tools and the communication channels in place, and people have tried it out. They're comfortable with it. They know they can trust this information source. It's kind of a single source of information that's trustworthy for particular types of events, and it's not a source or a channel that's abused and used in other situations. And then having the mechanisms in place to reach the appropriate parties with information that's relevant to them, so that communication channel is both all the ways you can reach people, but it's also the tailoring of the information, so what people do get is relevant to them. It's clear what action they should take, what responses they need to make. And that kind of minimizes, the stress in the organization, speeds that feedback loop, and then allows, the event to be effectively responded to, recovery to be in place. And then since you have the system and the platform in place for critical event management, the data is there to afterwards go back, do reporting, do audit, understand what happened, how can the organization learn from this and continually improve going forward. So BlackBerry specific solution here is BlackBerry Alert. So this is our next generation of our critical event management, builds on our expertise with BlackBerry Ad Hoc over the past 2 decades for the most complex organization, but brings that expertise in a way that's consumable by any organization. Key thing, it's a pure SaaS system. No infrastructure needs to be installed. It can be delivered as a managed service. So organizations that don't have dedicated emergency response teams, BlackBerry can handle that for you. We'll help you set up the plans, help you run drills, help you actually execute and communicate with people during the critical events. So we're really trying to bring the expertise we have across almost any type of critical event, whether it's an IT or cyber, business operations, safety emergencies. We give you alert packages, which bring our years of expertise and domain knowledge in all of these different areas to bear. So that's for you. We'll work with you then to customize those, to pull in other sources of data that are needed for you. Whether that's, SOS information, weather information, IoT sensors. We'll help you ingest and set up those feeds so that you can monitor things as an organization and know when an event is likely to happen, or when it does happen, you've got all of the information needed. And that includes tying in to your existing systems. So things like Microsoft Teams. So you've got an existing collaboration environment. How do you bring people together in that environment, work through the situation in that environment, and then evoke all of the other business workflows, from that one collaborative space. And then at the end of the day, it's all about situational awareness. And this is one of the reasons why at the C-level, they're looking for a common platform, a common infrastructure, a common set of business processes across all types of events, because you want to have an overall situational awareness of the entire business. What's the state of the business? You got to have multiple crises going on at one time. Or what's the state of my facilities? What is the state of my assets? Are my people safe? Where are they at? Who's affected? And only by having a single system and a single process to pull that together can executives truly have the situational awareness to make sure the right people are getting accurate information and they're responding as effectively as possible. And all of that communication flow needs to be through a variety of channels, whether those are ones that are in your network or out of band. So if you're under a cyber attack, you may not want people to be trying to use the corporate email system. So you need a variety of communication channels, and that's what BlackBerry Alert provides, along with all of the security and privacy that's necessary for people to be confident in the system operation and to use it on a daily basis, and as well as providing a fully auditable environment. So if you look at it, at a high level, it's really about the business process. It's really about the philosophy of the organization, the things that Alison talked about around business continuity. But when it comes to critical events, you still need to manage the details of that event. And the key to that is that you kind of have the trust so that you have accurate information. You're getting it to the right people. They're trained and they know how to respond. It's not being made up on the fly. And that you're able to learn from that. So each time something happens, your response is more effective. And by doing that over time, you're going to minimize the negative impact on your business, on your brand's reputation, on your employees, and that's going to provide significant value to the entire organization. So, thanks for your time. I think we do have some Q&A that's coming in, so feel free to enter additional questions. I see a few already. So maybe I'll start off. Alison, let me turn my camera on here. Hey, Alison, have you seen over the past year, are you seeing much change in enterprises putting these formal systems in place? I know in the past, governments, large banks, large organizations had this, but are you starting to see it adopted on a broader scale, and what might be some drivers for that?
So I think, thanks for the question. I think that there is some migration at the enterprise side of the house away from sort of more of the public sector and the financial services. I think that's largely because I think there's a movement towards understanding and catering to this broader notion of the duty of care in the enterprise space. And that really is, when you think about it from a personal level, you spend a lot of time with your colleagues at work typically, or, liaising with them all day, often sometimes more than your family, to be honest. So I think that there is this notion that enterprises really need to be able to minimize the impact of that continuous volatility that I was talking about in a way that is, you can't just sort of respond to that on the fly. You need to have that sort of set up in a mitigative almost capacity, and so I think that they're understanding now that the threshold for that duty of care is higher. People also, I think, just don't want to. Everybody realizes that you have your phone at your fingertips the entire time, and you have this whole these expectations coming from the consumerization of IT, where you have everything that you need at your fingertips all the time, and the notion that your organization that you work for and your partners, that you couldn't actually manage that information proactively and in a competent kind of manner is just, I don't think it's, passing the smell test anymore. So I think that there's a couple of factors that, again, that the rise in the duty of care in the enterprise space, and then also our citizen and commercial expectations from what we want from the organizations that we liaise with.
Yeah, and we actually are seeing that with some of our customers, where not only are they worried about communicating inside their organization, but to effectively respond, in a lot of cases, they actually have to communicate with other parts of the community. And so if we use the Eastman example, the ability, even though they have their own emergency services, they need to communicate with the city services as well, so people know, what needs to be done, cross organizationally. But
let me just go. I think there's one from MeTech that I can ask you 1 second, because I think it's more appropriate. So critical event management sounds like a logical approach to managing critical events enterprise-wide. Is it hard to implement, A? And then B, which functional groups typically use it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And is it hard to implement? My thought on that is, it's actually, from a technology perspective, it's not overly hard. The biggest challenge is the organization processes and actually, driving the adoption. And so the key there is that, not only putting the systems in place, but having a thoughtful rollout plan, and also branding the critical event messaging so people know that it's something they should respond to, that it's serious, it's important, if they got it, it affects them, and not just, hey, we're having a bake sale today. So I would say, the complexity is more around the adoption. And the good news is, there's a lot of best practices in that. BlackBerry has experience, companies such as IDC have experience in that. So the key is, really do that planning rollout, because you don't want to have a stunted rollout, because then it's hard to get the adoption on the right curve at that point in time.
Yeah. And follow up to that, kind of in the next question here, I'm seeing it says, and I can comment on this a little bit too, but I think it's kind of you might have a little bit more to say about it. But our organization currently uses Microsoft Teams, and it's becoming the common communication tool for collaboration. So how is critical event management different from the capabilities that you would have in a Teams capacity?
Yeah, I mentioned Teams as an integration example. So yeah, that's good if someone jumped right on that. So Teams is a collaborative communication space, right? So, you come into there, you're sharing information, you're collaborating. And so but that's just part of responding to a critical event. So if we think about the life cycle of a critical event, initially you need to be able to determine and triage, that an actual event of importance has happened. You then need to say, who do we need to gather to work on this? And hopefully you've predefined that. You've got a set of plans so you can automatically pull people together. And so when they come together, they might come together in areas such as Teams, where channels have been set up for crisis response. The information can be pulled in there, they can talk, but then there's going to be communication workflows that are needed And so that's things like BlackBerry Alert is providing those communication flows. Hey, we need these phone calls, these text messages, these emails. We need to put this stuff up on digital signage, depending on the situation. And so what our integration is focused on is while you're in that collaborative environment, you can also pull up your communication plans through Alert and make whatever tweaks are needed, send those out, monitor the delivery, monitor the responses that come back. So, it's having that secure collaborative space is important, but it's not driving the full workflow that's needed. So that's why we did a lot of integration of Alert and BlackBerry Ad Hoc with Teams.
Yeah, and to my mind, I think people need to understand that there, this omni-channel ability to relay communications, that are unified and, do you know what I mean? They're targeted. Teams is great, but it's much more, it's collaboration on a much smaller scope, and it doesn't actually extend out, say, for example, to your partner ecosystem or your supplier ecosystem, things like that. It's more of your internal sort of workforce, to my mind at least. And I think that, we're increasingly realizing that we need to be able to broaden the scope of, again, back to that duty of care, to that broader ecosystem, so that as a whole, the business remains and the market remains more resilient. And so that was why I thought it was such an important part to discuss the resilience in the aggregate, and particularly in light of this continuous volatility that we've got going on. There's another question. Looks like maybe it would be good teed up for you. I'm just running through the questions here. We've had some significant challenges communicating with employees as our workforce is more dispersed this year. What are some of the best practices in leveraging a solution like this for keeping employees informed? That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think the number one best practice is that you be clear about how you want to use the system, when you want to use the system, and be consistent about that. So, and that gets back to this idea of branding it. So, in the Eastman example we looked at, they actually call it Eastman Alert. So, only things that meet a certain standard, you would push through that. So that's kind of the number one best practice is, don't have it become a spam channel, right? Because then people are going to tune it out. The second, and it's related to this, is don't blast everyone. Tie it into a set of logic where you can identify whether that's by role, whether it's by geographic location, whether that's by people that are utilizing certain systems, so that you're tailor and only deliver the information to the specific people that it's relevant to. And then the third area is really around, it's really important that you make these communications, because you're using them for important topics, that you make them very clear. You don't want a novel. You need to be able to, in a very short sentence, make it very clear to the people what's going on, what the impact likely is on them, and what specifically you're asking them to do. It may be you're just giving them a notice, or you're asking them to answer the following question. But, particularly when crisis things are going on and things are moving quickly, just being concise and being clear to people, how they need to answer. And then the final thing I would say, and this kind of gets back to the trust discussion that we had, is, and I see it's going to also relate to another question I saw someone put in about GDPR. Mm-hmm. People need to be confident that the information is going to be used in an appropriate manner, that it's going to be protected. And I think there was an earlier part of a question about what parts of organizations, are typically using this. And so that's going to be, depending on what you're doing, it could be an HR type of thing. Mm-hmm. So like people that had to do COVID surveys, a lot of times that's driven by HR, that's protected health information. Or, if it's going to be, more of an IT driven event than it's your SOC or something like that. But each of those organizations has policies around, how to protect and manage data and protect the privacy of that data where appropriate. But also by keeping things tight, you're also going to limit the amount of information you might collect that you didn't really want to collect.
Yeah, then they don't get kind of that notification fatigue, which we talked about, have talked about previously, which is important these days, especially as we just seem to get so many notifications on our phones from every single app that we're we're using a lot of the time. I can. There's one question here that's just come in that I can answer. What's the main? And you can supplement. What's the main difference between ad hoc and alert? Well, ad hoc is more on the public safety emergency notification side, and alert is in the enterprise space. Those are the sort of two different positionings related to two different kind of business objectives, priorities, and business realities that differ slightly in the two sort of markets, public sector versus private sector, as you were.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add is, if it's an overly complex environment, you need, for example, an on-premise deployment, or you need to tie into a number of specialty sensors and things like that are, say if you're a large industrial facility, then, ad hoc is more designed for that, where, as Alison mentioned, alert is based more, general purpose across the enterprises.
And back to GDPR for a quick sec. Is BlackBerry Alert GDPR compliant to your mind?
To my mind, yes. I mean, there's a lot of nuances in that answer. The first thing I would say is we do provide, EU-based data center. So, we address those data residency requirements. Mm-hmm. Second thing is customer information is segmented. So, we're not mixing the data from different customers. All of that data is heavily encrypted. We go through a number of procedures around that. And then the customers actually, own their data. They're the ones that are managing that user information, how to reach people. So, so the foundation's there. But, is it GDPR compliant? Depends on how you as an organization deploy it, what governance you put around the usage of the information. But we give you the tools you need, to be compliant.
And I think we've danced around this one here a bit. We need to be mindful of PII, personally identifiable information of our employees. How can I ensure that we're keeping their contact information secure? I think you've talked a little bit to that, but I don't know if you want to add anything further.
Yeah, so we're using, in different encryption technologies for PII. We're part of our best practices is defining what information you really need to collect, and not collecting information that you shouldn't, that you don't really need. The other thing there is, is we do use opt-in models, particularly if things are facing outside your organization, so people know, they volunteered, so we've got that record. So it's a combination of things, but coming out of our heritage with government organizations, we've always been it's been very strict. Part of the certification work we did on the ad hoc side that we brought that experience to alert has been around appropriate protection and privacy of information.
Mm-hmm. And then from a cyber perspective, folks are wondering about how BlackBerry Alert can manage IT or cyber incidents.
Yeah. So what we're going to manage is the response to that, and the part of the response where who do you need to communicate with, how do you push them the right information. So obviously the BlackBerry cyber tools, we're going to detect the event, we're going to try to mitigate the event from a technical perspective, but then you move to the situation where, okay, this needs to be escalated. So what Alert's going to help you do is a playbook. Hey, we're having a malware attack. We're having a phishing attack. Who needs to be gathered? You can't just get on the phone and start trying to call people. Well, you can invoke that workflow, and it'll automatically reach out, gather those appropriate people into a communication. So that could be people from the SOC. That could, depending if that. And then we've got a playbook that's already set up for them. So they've helped to define that playbook, but they then go through and say, okay, in this type of attack, this type of situation, we need to notify this set of executives. We need to notify our PR department. Hey, this is an active phishing attack. We actually want to notify all of the employees to be aware of this particular thing. And we want to do it in an out-of-band way because, we don't want them. It comes in, they know there's a phishing attack, they get this email about a phishing attack, they're going to be suspicious. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is giving you the framework for the human speed part of your response, and gathering people automatically because you predefine that based on roles, and then the communications that need to be done either to specific groups or to employees. And if you need to do surveys and collect responses, that's built into it as well.
Yep. And sort of the last question to my mind here, how many and this is really critical to my understanding of this, because the UI languages and communication channels, calls, this person wants to know how many of them are available now. And, we see this in the pandemic outreach all over the place, where you're trying to I live in Toronto, so we're trying to, there's so many, ethnic communities here, and that outreach is pivotal. So I imagine this is something that you guys encounter all the time in the workforce and need to really be able to deliver on.
Yeah. So, there's two parts to this to think about. One is the actual messages that go out. And in that, we can support any language, and you can predefine these messages in any language. So that's, the email that someone will get, the message that comes on their app, the text message they get, or the phone call they get, that can be in any language. The actual UI of the system, we support, probably half a dozen different languages there. But that's really more from an administrator perspective who's coming in to use that system. Because remember, the end users, the actual communications are going to be in their language. And then in terms of communication channels, it's not a hard number, a specific number, because we've got the common ones. You've got emails, you've got app messages, you've got instant messages, you got text messages, you got phone calls. But then there's all things. There's social. You can have trusted social channels you can push things out to, but then you can have things such as public address systems, for example, digital signage. So depending on your use case, it's not a hard number of which channels are available. It depends on your environment.
Mm-hmm. We just actually did get one other question in. Okay. Is there BlackBerry Alert in the cloud, hybrid, and on-prem, like ad hoc?
Yeah. Now, BlackBerry Alert is a pure SaaS solution, so it's only cloud. If you need a hybrid or an on-prem type environment, BlackBerry Ad Hoc is the way to go. We continue to invest in and build Ad Hoc out as well, but really tailoring it for the more complicated use cases.
Gotcha. That's a wrap there.
Yeah, well, hopefully people found the session useful. If you think of other questions afterwards, feel free to reach out to BlackBerry. We've got blackberry.com/CEM for critical event management. So /CEM. We have information on BlackBerry Alert and BlackBerry Ad Hoc, white papers, some additional IDC reports, and we appreciate your time and look forward to the opportunity to talk to you more about your requirements. So thanks, Alison.
Thanks, David.
Yep. Bye.